A portion of this video is sponsored by Paperlike.
John Rettinger from Techno Buffalo here with an unboxing for you of the Apple iPad.
The new iPad that is supposedly lighter than air. Let's go ahead and open it up and see what the latest tablet from Apple has to offer.
So this is a new iPad Air. And like, at first glance, it looks like Apple's figured out the perfect tablet. It's got a fast chip, it's got a great display, clean design. The weird part, closer you look, the more complicated I think this thing gets. So let's talk about why the iPad lineup looks the way it does, and why this model might be Apple's, I think, most confusing product to date. But to really understand why this 6th gen iPad exists, you kinda have to go back to the beginning. 15 years. That's how long it's been since Steve Jobs walked on stage, held up the shiny slab of glass, and basically said, hey, what if your laptop and your iPhone had a baby?
The iPad.
And the iPad, 9 months later, was born. And in those 15 years, no Apple product has gone through more phases, pivots, and identity crises than the iPad. This thing has changed more than Apple's definition of pro or space gray. So it started really simply. The iPad was made for reading, watching videos, playing Fruit Ninja, basically just chilling. And people loved it. We're talking over 300,000 units sold on day one. I camped out in line.
A lot of people just hanging out. All right, so it's 9 o'clock. Just getting ready to open the doors. Yay, consumerism.
1 million were sold in the first month, and by the end of its first year, 15 freaking million iPads out the door in a product category people weren't even sure they needed. And Apple did not just sell lots of iPads, they were printing cash. In its first full year of sales, iPad brought in $5 billion in revenue. And that was just the beginning. But then Apple did what Apple does, they made it confusing. So we had the iPad, then we had the iPad 2, then they dropped numbers faster than battery life on iOS betas, and suddenly it was just iPad. Then
we call it
iPad Air, then iPad Pro, and I think now we're at the iPad 11th gen. There's an iPad mini, iPad Air obviously, iPad Pro in 2 sizes, probably an iPad Shuffle hiding somewhere in Apple's drawers, and the lineup only got messier over time. So the iPad Air showed its shiny face in 2013, and it was thinner, lighter, and a total hit. It helped push iPad sales past 225 million by 2015. And then we got the iPad Pro later in 2015.
Feels a little inflated. I don't know why. Maybe because the iPad Pro's got an inflated ego of what it can do. It's claiming it can replace a laptop.
Bigger screen, more power, brought us accessories like Apple Pencil and Smart Keyboard. And again, people bought them in droves. So by 2020, I'm talking peak pandemic, work from home chaos. Predictably, I think iPad sales spiked again, hitting over 71 million units. And remember, first year iPad sales revenue was $5 billion. 2020, $23.7 billion in revenue for that year alone. Apple doesn't break out iPad sales by models, unfortunately, but analysts suggested, at least hinted at, the iPad Pro models made up about 25 to 30% of that revenue, despite being the most expensive option. Right, but here's the thing. In 2023, iPad revenue is still massive, 28.3 billion, but growth was not really a thing anymore. That's still the case. iPad unit sales have dropped from their pandemic peak down to around a measly 54 million per year. And why? I think it's because people are holding on to their iPads longer. And honestly, I can't blame them, I do it too. Most iPads are already faster than anything you're likely to throw at them. And since its launch, Apple has sold over 500 million iPads worldwide, and total lifetime revenue from iPads is $250 billion. And that is an absolutely wild number for a product category that at one point, people including myself, just called a big iPod Touch. All right, so I had to change my clothes to talk about this, but if you were using your iPad Air for anything serious. So things like note-taking, drawing, or just trying to read and not blind yourself with reflections. You gotta check out this video's sponsor, Paperlike. It's a screen protector that does way more than just protect your screen. It's actually adding a subtle texture that makes the iPad pencil actually feel like you're writing on paper. Paper-like. It doesn't feel like glass, not ice, not the back of a laminated menu, actual paper. Using these tiny nanodots to add just the right amount of resistance, you get better control without messing up the display quality. And whether you are like jotting notes or sketching ideas, everything just feels better on it. It also, I think probably most importantly, cuts down on glare like crazy. It's getting the benefits of the nano texture glass you get on the iPad Pro, except this works on any iPad. It doesn't cost you extra just to not see your own reflection. I'm using it now in the studio for a while, and honestly, it's one of the easiest upgrades to recommend. If you want your iPad to feel more like a notebook, this gets it there. If you want to learn more about Paperlike or pick it up for really any version of the iPad, hit the link down below.
And intuitive services. The iPad Air is the thinnest, so the most advanced iPad we've ever built.
All right, so here we are, current generation, the new iPad Air, and it is a weird one. Not because it's bad, it's actually far from it. I think the iPad Air has quietly become Apple's best default iPad. It's not the super cheap model with big bezels. It's not the crazy expensive version with OLED displays and Face ID. It is right there in the middle. It's sort of the iPad most people should buy and probably buy. And assuming they can figure out sort of which iPad is which. And this year, Apple gave the Air its biggest upgrade in a very long time. New chip, new size option, new keyboard, new pencil. And on paper, obviously it looks like a giant home run. But then you start to look at it a little more closely. And it's basically the same iPad Air we've had for years, just faster. So what's actually new here? So this iPad is running Apple's M3 chip, the same chip you'll find in a lot of Apple's computers. And compared to last gen's M1 iPad Air, we're talking up to 60% faster CPU performance, 65% faster GPU performance, and nearly 2 times faster sort of machine learning tasks. And while all that sounds impressive and Apple will push that at you right down your throat, what does it actually mean for real people? So it means exporting 4K videos in LumaFusion happens way quicker. Gaming in titles like Resident Evil Village is smoother with better graphics performance. Photo editing in Lightroom is almost instant. Multitasking, you can have 8 to 10 apps running in the background while you watch YouTube, browse the web, and pretend to answer emails. And this iPad will not break a sweat. But I think, to be real, most people are not pushing this thing to its limits. And for most of us, the iPad Air is total overkill. It's like the equivalent of buying a $4 million Pagani, some fancy sports car, and never taking it out of first gear. It can do incredible things. Most of the time, it's just checking email and playing games at 2 a.m. Physically, not much has changed, but I don't think that's a bad thing. You still get flat-sided, modern iPad design, USB-C charging, thin bezels, Touch ID built into the power button. It's simple, it's clean, it is all in all very Apple. We did though get some new colors. Space gray for minimalists, Starlight, people who wanna have their tech match their jewelry, a new blue that looks actually blue, kind of a purpley color that, I don't know, looks like it's ready for Instagram. But the iPad Air still comes in 11-inch and 13-inch sizes. And that bigger 13-inch screen is great for watching movies, multitasking with split view, or just probably scrolling endlessly while ignoring real life. Everything feels a bit more comfortable with the extra screen real estate. Apple also updated the Magic Keyboard, now with an actual function row, which is a huge welcome. Bigger trackpad, makes the whole thing just feel more like a laptop. The new Apple Pencil Pro adds haptic feedback, a new squeeze gesture, and built-in Find My support. And for everyone else, it is nice, but I think extremely overkill. iPad OS is still the best and worst thing about the iPad. And I think this is where things get the most complicated. So the iPad Air is 100% capable of replacing your laptop without question. If, and a giant if, you're willing to play by iPad OS rules. And that's the thing about using the iPad as a computer. It's not that you can't do the stuff you want, it totally can, but you have to do it the way the iPad wants you to do it. You wanna edit videos? You totally can. LumaFusion, Final Cut Pro, they run great. but you're probably importing from external SSDs because internal storage fills up fast. Managing files is a little more than sort of tap and then hope and then drag and drop. It's complicated to do. If you want to multitask, you can. You got split view, slide over, stage manager, they all work, but it's a very iPad specific kind of multitasking. You're moving windows around with gestures, resizing apps like you're playing sort of touchscreen Tetris. It's fine, but it's most definitely not Mac OS. External display, it supports it, it exists finally, but with Stage Manager enabled, it's still fussy about window placement and scaling. File management, to its credit, has improved a lot over the years, but Files is very clearly not Finder. You're still tapping select and moving stuff around one by one more often than you'd like. Even Safari, which Apple calls desktop class now, still runs into websites that treats iPad OS like a mobile browser. Little things feel different, and I think that's the story of iPad OS. It's most definitely not worse, it is just different. And the iPad shines the most, and this is when the iPad's at its best, when you sort of let it be what it wants to be. A absolutely phenomenal media device, a light creative workstation, and a productivity tool for people who want to be inside of Apple's ecosystem. But if you walk into this expecting a MacBook with a touchscreen, you're going to have a very bad experience. So I want to break down who I think the iPad Air is for, because I think this is where a lot of people get stuck. And I get this question a lot, what iPad should I get? So the M3 iPad Air is for people who want the good iPad, but don't want to spend iPad Pro money. If you're buying your very first iPad and want something that feels fast, modern, and future-proof, this is probably the one to get. It's the sweet spot. Big display, powerful chip, works great for streaming, note-taking, casual photo editing, light video work, just general tablet stuff. Absolutely perfection for students, perfect for people who want sort of a lightweight entertainment and productivity machine. Absolutely. Anyone who's hanging on to an older iPad Air or a base model from 4 or 5 years ago is going to feel like a massive upgrade. But here's who should not buy this. If you already have an M1 iPad Air or even an iPad Pro from the past couple of years, you are fine. Skip this one. The M3 chip is faster, yeah, but it's not going to change how you use an iPad from day to day. You're not missing some game-changing features here. And if you want an iPad for the basics, streaming Netflix, browsing the web, checking email, the regular 11th gen iPad is going to be totally fine for way less money. And if you're someone who needs true desktop level software, Final Cut Pro without compromises, advanced file management, external displays that just work, honestly, you're better off getting a MacBook Air. Same chip-ish. The iPad Air is perfect for people who want something nicer, but don't need everything. It's for people who want a really good tablet, not a computer in disguise. The M3 iPad Air is a fantastic tablet for most people. It's probably the best iPad to buy. But the iPad lineup, I think, needs therapy. Apple's been busy trying to turn the iPad into a laptop. They kind of forgot what made the iPad special in the first place. And if the next 15 years of iPad are going to matter, it's not going to be because it replaced your computer. It's going to be because it didn't have to.